Hi, everyone. Before we get started today, I wanted to share a word with you and a special offer for all of our listeners from our terrific sponsor at 212. Now, if you haven't heard of 212 and you're a startup founder, you need to make sure you don't miss what I'm about to say. At the heart of every business is your cap table. It's how you know who owns what of the business, and not only is it essential to understanding your ownership, but it's also increasingly a legal requirement expected of you by investors and regulators alike. But managing a cap table on an Excel spreadsheet is a nightmare. Trust me, I myself have done it, and it's not something I'm proud of, nor would I do it again, after having raised money from over 2,100 investors via regulation crowdfunding. That's why when it comes to cap table management, I switched over to 212 and I'm not looking back. With their white glove onboarding service included for free, I was up and running with our cap table solution in no time. Now, I should note something really important. Other cap table providers on the market price based on your number of investors, which means when it comes to managing all of your investors, especially from online raises, you can be paying thousands of dollars in yearly fees. And that's what makes 212 far and away the best and most cost-affordable option on the market for startup founders. With 212, you pay one flat fee of $240 a year, regardless of how many investors you have, and you get their full suite of features right out of the box without any hidden fees. One of my favorite features is the ability to see how much you'll get diluted if you take that next check. If you're a founder or an investor, you owe it to yourself to check out the 212 website at 212.co. That's TWO12.co. And get this, they're giving KingsCrowd listeners an additional 25% off your first year membership with discount code KingsCrowd25. Dilution is real, complex, and expensive. For just $20 a month, well, $15 after the discount code, you can sleep easy at night and be ready when your next investor says yes. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on another episode of the KingsCrowd Startup Investor Podcast. Today, I am very excited to be joined by Wes Burdine, the co-founder of the Minnesota women's soccer team. This is going to be a really cool one because unlike a traditional startup, the Minnesota soccer team decided that they wanted to give an opportunity to the community to be able to invest in and own a part of a real professional women's soccer team, which I think is so cool. This is going to be a cool conversation, one that's different from most that we have. So with that, I will kick it off. Wes, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited for it. Thanks.
Outstanding. Well, Wes, just to kind of kick it off, would love for you to tell people a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you came to found or co-found the Minnesota women's soccer team.
Yeah, so I worked with, it's about 8 people, 9 people. It was initially an even larger group because we went out there and tried to find a group of people who are from the Twin Cities, the Minnesota soccer community, and create this great group that could launch a women's soccer team here. My personal background is that I meandered a lot and was in academia and got a PhD, and then decided to open a queer soccer bar, and that's been my my kind of career journey. And now that position, having this bar that is right near the MLS team stadium, the Minnesota United Stadium, puts me, in this spot where, having written about soccer for about a decade and knowing the soccer community well, I was excited to have a place where we could expand the soccer world and hit a market that is extremely untapped. Women's soccer is huge. We all know this, right? We know how big Megan Rapinoe is. We know how big the Women's World Cup is and the Olympics are. And yet there are so few teams out there that are actually taking women's soccer seriously as a thing to sell cool jerseys and a way to actually meet grown-up needs. It's so often marketed as, oh, well, dads who love sports can take their daughters and it's going to be great for role models, and in this really patronizing way. And myself and the co-founders all saw this, and we think, man, soccer is already big in Minnesota, and women's soccer is big, and we can hit this need here in a way that that I just don't see. Even the professional teams, the NWSL teams, a lot of them aren't taking it that seriously, and I think it's to their detriment. I think that we can see how much every time the U.S. Soccer launches a women's kit to celebrate the World Cup, they sell out of important players' names, and it's like, guys, do you not get it? This is big, and you're not getting it yet. So.
No, I think it's really cool. For those who don't know, I'm extremely passionate about this space. And I personally am a huge believer in investing in sports teams for the long term. I think I saw yesterday, George Steinbrenner 70 years ago, I believe it was, or 50 years ago, I forget the number now, bought the Yankees for $10 million, and it's now worth many, many billions. I think like $6.8 billion. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen or what have you, but there's so many trend lines working in your favor, right? Fan experience, like just soccer in the US alone, and then interest in the female side of things, because it's just been so underrepresented on television and media and all of these things. And it's finally starting to pick up and get the rights that it deserves. So I think there's a huge economic opportunity here alone, never mind the fact that it's just really cool and really necessary. So tell us a little bit about the team that you're founding and what league that you're joining in this founding of the team.
Yeah, so the team is still called the Minnesota Women's Soccer Team. I think probably by the time this podcast is out, our official name that the community owners, our investors, have voted on, and the identity will be out there. We had like a 3-month period where we were working with them and put out names that they voted on, and then put out 3 brand identities that they voted on back in December. And we are going to be playing in the USLW League, which is a brand new league. It's what's called pre-professional, in that I think there's similar stuff in hockey and baseball, in that this is basically a chance for women who are playing college, or women who are out of college and have not found long-term, because there aren't that many professional opportunities, that they can come and play with us. And so it's amateur, but it's at a high level, and the USL is already established in men's lower division soccer. They're launching this new league, and it's a national-wide league with regional groupings. And so it's a perfect opportunity for us to get in this space, which is, we wanted this to be grassroots. We did not want to approach the whales with money and try to get into NWSL, because we see an opportunity to get in and build something small that eventually we would love to move to a higher level. But you can't do that from the offset. So the perfect thing of USL launching this league, us being able to launch this team, and grow it from there, and show the viability of really grassroots punk rock soccer, which is that it is community owned. It's owned by 3,080 people who invested an average of, shoot, I should have had, I think it's $347. I should have had that handy, sorry. And we wanted it to be this small thing. We had larger investors come in and say, hey, we believe in this. And we essentially told them, like, that's awesome, you can get in line just like everyone else, because we wanted to build something unique in the soccer landscape. And the great part about women's soccer is that because it's still growing really in a way that maybe is more like MLS. Wow, it's early days. That you can get in and build something, but there's also a level of larger interest around the country that wasn't there in the early MLS days for men's soccer. And so it's this unique moment where I think that we can build something like that from the ground up.
I couldn't agree more. It's definitely an undervalued, underestimated segment. And I think you're right with, the Women's World Cup team in the US is just phenomenal. And, the likes of Megan Rapinoe and whatnot, they're generating a whole new generation of soccer players who are going to be passionate about the sport and be huge fans of the sport. So I think there's a lot to come there. So tell us about, some of your plans. Are you getting ready for the upcoming season? What does that look like? Where do you play? I'd love to hear a little bit more about the team.
Yeah, so a couple of those things are still yet to be announced, so I can't quite tell you where we're going to play, but there are plenty of mid-level options. We're not going to the MLS stadium because this will be a smaller thing. We're hoping, we have 3,000 community investors. We're hoping for, if we got 2,000 people to a game, it would be unheard of in this type of soccer. But we think that we can get, 5,000 people to a home opener and average something above 3,000, which again would be 5 years ago, or let's see, 5 years ago when Minnesota United was playing in the lower divisions, not in the MLS, they were not getting those numbers. And so what we're imagining is pretty ambitious, but I think what our community investment campaign has shown us is that I wasn't even being ambitious enough. I think that it really has tapped a level of interest and a level of kind of something that people haven't seen around the country. We only have a few men's teams that have done what we've done, and we, we announced our staff just a few back in December. One of them are all of them have experience on college coaching circuits and elite youth circuits and this kind of level. One of them played in the women's Bundesliga, and they were fantastic players on their own. And then now we're going to be announcing players over the next few months, trying to get local Midwest talent, but also trying to bring in other players who maybe they're playing part-time part of the year in Europe and have 5 months, 6 month contracts, and then they can come back and play as quote unquote amateurs with us and try to get eyes so that they can move to the NWSL or move to, we're here to basically build up these women and put them in better spots. That includes our technical staff, our front office staff, our players. We want to be part of what's building up this network that doesn't really exist right now, to get more women chances to have eyeballs on them and to pursue this as a career.
And I would imagine if, there's already a pretty strong fandom in Minnesota, right, for these other professional soccer teams, it provides an opportunity to, once you're a fan of a sport, if there's more of it in your area, you're probably going to show up and go to that as well.
Yeah, so some of what we're going to do is try to get that existing soccer groundswell. Minnesota United is very good at getting people in their brand new stadium, and I, owning a soccer bar across the street from that stadium, I'm very good at getting those people in my doors. But this also is going to hit a group of people who maybe aren't going to those games as regularly. The Twin Cities is very big. We always talk about how saturated it is because we've got we've got the NHL, we've got NBA, we have the WNBA who do fantastically here. We've got NFL and baseball, obviously. So there's a lot of things, as well as the University of Minnesota. But we're hitting a different type of target of kind of younger women out of college who sometimes go to those Minnesota United games, but they used to play college or high school soccer, and they want to get into it. Younger professionals who we found that a lot of the NWSL teams, some of their most successful season ticket sales are to, they're not to the dads with daughters or the coaches bringing their teams. They are to couples who have no kids, right? They're young professionals who want to go to games, and this is an alternative thing that they can go to. And so we can kind of hit those groups like that.
Very cool. Tell us a little bit about, this is a business, it's essentially an entertainment business. What are some of the different monetization models and ways that you can, produce income for the team?
Yeah, obviously the biggest is we want to put on parties, that we're there to have people come out there. And soccer is a live event. It is not as made for TV as football or other sports. It is there so that you can have a real connection to the team and to the fans. I've been a long time member of the what are called the supporters groups in soccer in Minnesota, who are the crazy people who jump up and down and wave flags and sing songs for 90 minutes during the game. And we want to bring that kind of energy. We want people to come to that. And that's going to be a big revenue driver. The other thing is we've seen, particularly outside of MLS, in these kind of lower division spaces in American soccer, the merchandising that teams like Detroit City, Forward Madison, who, for the real soccer heads, they know they've got Racing Louisville jerseys because they have an amazing Paisley, or they've got multiple Forward Madison jerseys because they put out 3 different kits a year and they are fashion, right? We've seen that happen a little bit in Europe as well with some of these bigger clubs. And so one thing we can do is make it cool to wear Minnesota women's soccer. Actually, I almost accidentally said the new team name. Would have had you re-edit that, but Minnesota women's soccer kits there and make that a cool thing. We're working with designers who can help design really cool scarves, really cool hats. And that is definitely going to be part of what we do. The other fantastic thing is we have in the Twin Cities a really great corporate base. We have, I think, some of the highest per capita of major corporations of any metro area. And so all of them want to be involved in promoting women. I'm here talking on this podcast, and usually I'm not the one representing the team. We've got multiple women who lead this team, and they, because I'm the investment expert here, they kind of had me do this one. But we are a women-led organization. Our board is majority women. Our board president, Andrea Yack, is a fantastic veteran of this scene. And so we find that these companies so far are really interested in getting involved in sponsoring women's soccer and sponsoring women-led initiatives. And so we're going to take their money. We want them to partner with us to grow, like we said, build these career pathways for women and find ways to take women's soccer seriously, not just as a pathway, but as something that we are all there to be entertained by and to have a good rowdy time at.
Did you find that during the raise, you were getting more folks from Minnesota investing in the team?
Absolutely, yeah, and we kind of expected that, right? We launched this as a community organized team, a community led team, and we want local ownership. What was more surprising is seeing how many people outside of Minnesota cared. I knew that we'd catch some attention outside of Minnesota, but we had, I think, all the states, including DC, except Delaware and West Virginia. They really let us down. And we had, I think, 8 different countries, people from 8 different countries. We had a couple different embassies people invested from. So that kind of level of catching a broader global attention was a bit more of I don't know if it was a surprise, but it was certainly really fun to watch. But yeah, most of our people are from Minnesota, and that's really great because we want this to be something that people have stakes in. This was led by a desire for us not to raise money. Obviously that helps us do what we want to do, but the desire is to create something that people think about and to invert the dynamic that professional sports teams have, which is that fans are consumers to be sold to. And we don't want that, because especially in soccer is a community asset that is built. The most marketable moments are the things that people have created in the stands and at home when they're making the banners and things like that. And we want this to be something that people have stakes in, so that it is their team literally, rather than something that a rich person owns and they do whatever they want with, and hopefully they do cool things with. So that was the real intent of this. And that's why the amount of people and even the low amount of median investment is pretty cool, because we want this to be something that is widespread. And when we set out on this, I think our initial goal was, well, if we got 1,500 people to a game every week, that would be pretty awesome. And now looking at 3,080, obviously not all of whom are going to be at every game, we look at that as a real base to build on and build something even bigger than what we kind of initially imagined.
When you founded or co-founded the team, did you know about equity crowdfunding and WeFunder, or did you stumble upon this in kind of your journey?
I didn't know about the specific mechanism of WeFunder. I knew that other clubs had done this. This has been a dream of mine for a decade to build a team. I had approached the existing owner of Minnesota United way back in the day with an idea of trying to build this model. And for, that model does not work in MLS, which is where they were eventually going. And so, I've wanted to do something like this for a long time. And so that's why I kind of made it my expertise. I'm not a finance expert, but I have obsessed over this idea, and then talked to Chattanooga FC and Detroit City were two extremely successful organizations that did this in the men's sphere. And they gave me great advice, and they both used WeFunder. And I thought, well, if it works for them, it'll work for us. And then worked with a lot of lawyers to really get myself and the rest of the team that we were building up to snuff, to make sure that we knew what we were getting into and how, and to really think through the logistics and the implications of how to actually go through all this process. But it was definitely at the initial meeting 2 years ago, it was at the center. The main thing is this is going to be a community equity organization.
That's pretty amazing. Already 2 years in the making. Has there been other outside capital, or have you really taken it all from the community to date? And then second question to that, where does the capital get deployed?
Yeah. So, there was outside capital in that 3 of the co-founders put some money in. That's about it. Right?
Nice.
We didn't, and again, like I said, we did have multiple people approach us and say, hey, we would love to really invest. And we could have, other organizations, you can do a Reg D with a Reg CF, sure. Your listeners, I'm sure, are familiar with those, but we could do that. But we realized that we didn't need those kind of whales. And, while obviously it's way easier to get $100,000 from one person, because you only have one person to deal with rather than, 100 people, it's much, it was not the point, like I said, to just get the money. We wanted 100 people to invest that money. We wanted 1,000 people to invest $100, because we knew of the advantage later on. Obviously it makes it, dealing with 3,000 people is not easy. People had lots of different opinions about everything. They'll email you, and it's super great, but it's also overwhelming. It's way easier to deal with a couple whales in some ways, but they also have more power to their weight, and they can tell you what to do. And we wanted to be led by a more broader democratic base. Now, how we're going to deploy the capital is really interesting. We had a few different models of, well, let's say we raise X amount, let's say we raise Y amount and Z amount. We hit Z, and that was a little bit of a surprise, not something that we were totally blown away by, but it definitely was pleasing. And now it's a matter of figuring out what our trajectory is and how to create a sustainable system. A lot of professional sports are built on deficit models where you lose, the MLS teams are losing $3 million a year sometimes, but as you mentioned, the New York Yankees are worth $1 billion now, and MLS teams do that. Soccer teams all around, they lose money every year, but the overall value is growing exponentially. I find that model really problematic, and we want something that's more sustainable. We don't want to ever have to be really dependent on the hyper wealthy to make this their toy that they lose money on. And so that's a really big challenge. Not many teams run like that. And so we need to figure out a way to deploy this capital in ways that that is sustainable and that helps us make really good marketing investments where, yes, we can spend X amount on these early marketing points, but that pays off in longer term season tickets. But yeah, that's a really vague answer to say that we're really answering some of those questions right now. Part of it is that we need to finalize our venue and know what kind of situation, how many people can we get in, what kind of season tickets. That again should probably be out by the time this podcast gets public, but so it's kind of talking about some things that aren't quite set. But we're here to kind of deploy that capital so that we have a future and that we can build again toward what we believe is a trajectory toward. We all want to see professional women's soccer in Minnesota, and we want to be the ones that bring that there. In order to do that, we will have to grow enormously, and we will have to go to those whales, right? The NWSL, the women's soccer sphere, does require 35% ownership by someone with, I'm going off the top of my head, so I think they have to have 20 million in the bank or something. So we will have to go to larger investors, but our goal first is to build something that we can prove the concept that we believe in, and that we can prove is really sustainable. And then we can go and say, all right, now we want to do this on a higher level, and we get those whales to come to us. We don't want to go to them. And we get there to partnership so that we can build a really big community organization that can then be transferred into whatever form it might be. And maybe we stay at this level and maybe we're successful there, but our dream is to have a professional women's soccer team, and we'd love to be the ones to do that here.
Really cool. Last question for you. When you're getting into this league, did you have to, apply to get in and get some sort of license? How does that work? And where is that process at?
Yeah, so we very early on, we were announced as one of the founding teams of this league. The great part is that we were at the time, and for a long time, I think, the only independent team, meaning we don't have a men's team, we don't have a youth academy that we're built out of. We are just a women's soccer team. That's all we do. Now there is another one in Green Bay, actually, so there'll be a great, we'll import that football rivalry. So we applied very early on and had conversations with the league and said, hey, just so you know, this is who we are. We are going to have community investors. We are not going to be operating in these ways. And they were excited by that. They weren't daunted. I think that they've seen some success in the on the men's side of those teams that I mentioned. And I think that the vision we sold them was confident enough. And so we are in that league, and it kicks off actually in May. It's a very short season from May to the end of July. And so we are basically over the next couple months, we're recording this early January, and we'll be announcing our team name. I think in March we'll launch our kits, which we'll have a home and away kit that I believe, I've seen the initial work that we're doing on it, and they are going to be gorgeous. And so we'll be selling lots of merchandise over the next couple months. And then we'll be announcing players, and hopefully we'll be selling season tickets by the end of January. And that's really where it hits, right? Once we are actually saying we're going to be kicking a ball on May 20 something, or late May, and here's where these people are going to come out and they're going to cheer for the first time. That's what we've been building toward getting these women on the pitch so that people can wave flags and yell.
So cool. I give you a lot of credit. It's definitely not an easy path to go, but to get to be a part of founding a sports team. I mean, I think that's a dream of a lot of people. I give you a ton of credit for all that you've all accomplished. It's definitely a team sport, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where this thing goes. Wes, last thing that you kind of want our listeners to know as we kind of ended here?
No, I will just say that there is a space to do what we've done. I've talked to a lot of several soccer teams or potential soccer teams have kind of called me up to start asking for advice on how we did. And did what we did. And I think that we struck a little bit of magic, but in some ways, I think that there are a lot of people wanting to throw money into soccer and wanting to get involved in soccer. And to me, sustainable ways that we build women's soccer is the way that that I just see all these rich dudes buying tiny teams in Traverse City or wherever, and like I'm gonna build this big soccer team, and like we don't even have more than 12 professional women's soccer teams, and I just think that this is a space that people should be investing in, not to get rich, but investing in because we can build community assets that sure, we're not throwing away money. I'm not advocating investing just for fun, but we can build things that are sustainable, that can really accumulate in value organically, because they are a value that we're all coming together to build.
And it is fun too, for sure.
It is fun. Yeah, absolutely.
Outstanding. Well, Wes, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. Congrats on all that you've accomplished already. Glad to be an investor and a part of the Minnesota soccer team community, and looking forward to the future. Thank you again. Thank you to all who are listening here today, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Chris.